Hi, I'm Ellen, and I'm from Washington, and I'm here to help you. Honestly, I don't know if you've enjoyed the morning's presentations as much as I have, but it is just a remarkable morning, and I have some sort of radical ideas, and I'm going to ask you to suspend disbelief for just a little bit. So I'm going to actually talk to you about the future economy of government information. Re-envisioning government was a little bit broad for me. So let's start with what does it look like today? So I don't know how many of you know Douglas Adams, the author of The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, but he explains the current information economy much better than I could. In this scene, Arthur, our hero, meets the public servant, Mr. Prosser. And Mr. Prosser says, but the plans were on display. And Arthur replies, on display? I eventually had to go down to the cellar to find them. Well, that's the display department. With a torch? Ah, well, the lights had probably gone out. So had the stairs. But look, you found the notice, didn't you? Yes, said Arthur. Yes, I did. I found it on display in the bottom of a locked filing cabinet, stuck in a disused lavatory with a sign on the door that said, beware of the leopard. Our government today is only as powerful as citizens are informed, and our government is open. We at the Sunlight Foundation believe that the digital revolution is moving our culture from one based on scarcity and control to one that is based on abundance and participation. Sunlight is driven by the fact that a more open government will be one that is also more responsive to the public and one that is more efficient, more effective in how it uses public resources and how it delivers public services. When government opens up its data, it can also enable all kinds of new economies to develop. In the private sector, the best examples are probably the weather information, which is based on NOAA data, or the GPS system, which relies on NASA satellites. All kinds of new enterprises, for-profits and non-profits alike, are being built on top of the sharing of information. Think of Zipcar, which enables drivers to pool the use of their automobiles, or Craigslist, which enables people everywhere to exchange their goods and services almost at no cost. Now we're seeing all kinds of new public-private enterprises pop up in ways that combine to add government information and give it to us in a way that's useful. From apps that help you figure out how often a particular airline flight is on time, that's one of my personal favorites, to ones that help you pick the best hospitals or doctors, or more elaborate platforms that allow citizens to report problems like potholes or graffiti or crime to their local governments and then enable anyone to follow actually what is being done in response by local government. Sunlight's strategy is to continue to keep pushing for a future where citizens and journalists, all of us, increasingly use this data to create a more engaged citizenry and a more transparent and accountable government, and enable all kinds of new enterprises to flourish on top of the public sharing of data. So how do we get there? How do we get to a new economy of government information? Here's a bit of a radical statement. For those of you who know anything about government information, you know that FOIA, the Freedom of Information Act, has actually been a bedrock for information accessibility for citizens. But I would assert that it's actually a detriment to modern-day transparency. You see, FOIA puts the burden of disclosure on citizens rather than creating a proactive government that sees as its job to routinely and proactively produce information. A truly open government should be open by default, proactively sharing information without being asked. If this is where we'd like to go, let's look into the future. Imagine a world in which FOIA, the Freedom of Information Act, is replaced by a government that is open and willing to disclose information as a matter of regular business. We've actually, this is not as radical as we think, we've actually started down this path. I love telling this story here in Chicago. The Coburn Obama Act of 2006 was among the first of the handful of laws that was proactively exposing the workings of government and Congress to the sunlight. This law established this website, USSpendinggov, a website that allows any citizens today to research federal government spending. I should say, as an entrepreneur, that we helped to create a similar site held by a nonprofit that this government site was actually based on. Then, Senator Obama was elected president, as you well know, and on his first full day in office, he pushed an official executive memorandum called the Open Government Directive. With the implementation of this Open Government Directive, and while it's far from finished and certainly it's flawed in its implementation, it's really created a virtual cycle of competition between the two major parties to figure out who can be the most transparent or who can call for the most transparency. For this administration, it has meant improvements, huge improvements in access to thousands of government databases. They have not gone far enough, they have not moved fast enough, but it is a dramatic difference between this administration and any other administration in history. In the House, where the Republicans are in charge, the biggest commitment, although there have been quite a number by the Republicans, has been adherence to the so-called 72-hour rule, which puts all legislation that's pending online 72 hours before it's enacted. It's a unique opportunity to actually read legislation, whether we are citizens, whether we are issue activists, or indeed members of Congress themselves, before they actually vote on it. Neither political party has been perfect, but as we look back, these times that we are living in right now might be known as the government transparency era. So go with me from here. Suspend disbelief. Here's how this could mushroom and move forward. Imagine, in response to massive public pressure to finally root out special interest influence peddling, Congress passes a Government Transparency Act requiring all lobbyists to disclose all legislative contacts and all legislation discussed in real time on a daily basis. Imagine then that Congress passes another law, the Government for All Act, establishing the gold standard for government transparency of personal and financial relationships for all congressional members and senior staff and all senior executive appointees and staff as well. Next, Congress passes something called the Information for Everyone Act, requiring that not all non-emergency legislation be posted online at least 72 hours before its final vote. And then, perhaps in 10, 15 years, the crown jewel of the government transparency world, the Public Online Information Act, was passed. This law requires that any information that is required to be made public by any agency of government be made available online. These cascading series of reforms whet the appetite of the public for more open and transparent government. Suddenly, citizens are participating in the writing and drafting of legislation and regulations. The federal government stops fearing transparency and embraces openness and actually sees it as an opportunity for engagement and participation. So this may all seem fanciful, and perhaps it is, but imagine for a moment what it would be like if everything that the government can share publicly were made public as it happened. If every law, every report, inspection, enforcement, and meeting that should be public were in fact public and online in real time, it would be nothing short of revolutionary. Many of the incentives that govern our democracy would be fundamentally altered. Corruption would be nearly unthinkable. Remember that sunlight is said to be the best of disinfectants. Regulations could be swiftly enforced, waste quickly addressed. Citizens would have an easier time reaching out to their representatives and anyone in power, and the bad actors could be weeded out. But back to reality. There's a long road here. We have a long way to go to even solve the easy problems of government information transparency. But the goal of creating a new economy of government information is worthy. By expanding public access to government data, we are enabling citizens like never before to hold their government accountable and their elected officials accountable. Armed with access to all kinds of public data, citizens can play a more productive and effective role in self-government and civic life. And smart use of technology is critical to this. It allows government to build communities, to disperse information, to engage citizens in improving that information, and to deliver information however and whenever we want it. And this will be the new economy of government information. Thank you.